The rain had been falling steadily all day, a soft, constant drizzle that muffled the usual sounds of the town and turned the cobbled streets into a patchwork of shimmering puddles. It was the kind of day that made everyone seek shelter indoors, curling up with a book, a warm drink, or, in some lucky cases, the comforting aroma of freshly baked bread and pastries. In the corner of the town's main square stood a small, charming bakery, tucked between two tall, old buildings. Its large windows, fogged by the warmth from within, allowed just enough of a view to reveal rows of wooden shelves filled with freshly baked loaves, delicate pastries, and the soft golden glow of low-hanging lights. Inside, the bakery's warmth wrapped around everyone who entered like a comforting embrace. The scent of baking dough and melting butter filled the air, mingling with the subtle sweetness of sugar and spices. The quiet hum of conversation, the clinking of cups, and the gentle sound of rain against the windows created an atmosphere that felt both familiar and soothing. Sophie stood behind the counter, her hands busy shaping a fresh batch of dough into rolls. She loved the rain, especially when she was inside her cozy bakery, surrounded by the warmth of the ovens and the comforting rhythm of her work. The sound of rain pattering against the windows felt like a gentle melody, harmonizing with the crackle of the ovens and the occasional soft laughter of customers sipping their coffee. She glanced outside at the rain-drenched street and smiled, grateful for the peacefulness of this day. Sophie had opened her bakery 2 years ago after leaving her corporate job in the city. It had been a leap of faith, but one that felt right. She wanted something simpler, quieter. She had dreamed of a place where people could come in from the cold, warm their hands around a cup of coffee, and enjoy the simple pleasure of fresh bread. On days like this, she felt that her dream had come true. As she worked, her thoughts wandered to the regulars who often stopped by, their faces now familiar, some even becoming friends. But there was one customer she found herself thinking of more often than the others. His name was Daniel, and he had been coming in almost daily for the past few months. He always ordered the same thing: a cappuccino and a slice of the almond croissant that Sophie made herself every morning. It had been a quiet, almost unspoken ritual, but something about his presence always brought a soft flutter to her chest. She smiled to herself as she kneaded the dough, remembering the first time he had come into the bakery. It had been a day much like this, rainy and grey. He had walked in, shaking off his umbrella, and had looked around the bakery as though he'd discovered a hidden treasure. His dark hair had been damp from the rain, and his glasses had fogged up as soon as he entered, making her chuckle softly at the memory. Daniel hadn't said much that first day, just ordered his cappuccino and croissant and settled into a corner table by the window. But there had been something about him, something quiet yet kind. Over time, they'd exchanged pleasantries, and slowly, those brief interactions became the part of her day she looked forward to the most. As the rain continued to fall outside, Sophie glanced at the clock. It was late afternoon, and she knew Daniel would be stopping by soon, as he always did. Just the thought of it made her smile. She quickly finished preparing the dough, placing it in the oven, and wiped her hands on her apron. The familiar jingle of the doorbell rang through the bakery, and she looked up to see him standing there, umbrella in hand, shaking off the last remnants of rain from his coat. "Hey, Sophie," Daniel greeted her with a warm smile, his voice low and soothing, like the gentle rumble of thunder in the distance. His eyes sparkled behind his rain-speckled glasses, and as always, there was a quiet calm about him that seemed to match the weather outside. "Hey, Daniel," Sophie replied, her own smile mirroring his as she moved behind the counter. "The usual?" He nodded, his gaze lingering on her for a moment longer than usual before he looked out the window at the rain-soaked street. "Looks like it's not letting up anytime soon." "No," Sophie agreed, glancing out the window. "But it's nice, don't you think? There's something peaceful about it." Daniel turned his gaze back to her, and for a brief moment, the world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the warmth of the bakery and the quiet connection between them. "Yeah, it is," he said softly. Sophie quickly made his cappuccino, the soft hiss of the espresso machine filling the air. She carefully arranged his croissant on a small plate and handed it to him, their fingers brushing briefly as he took it. The brief contact sent a flutter through her, and she looked up to see him smiling at her, as if he had felt it too. Daniel took his usual seat by the window, watching the rain slide down the glass in thin streams. The bakery was quiet now, most of the customers having retreated to their homes as the day grew darker. Sophie found herself glancing in his direction as she worked, wondering what it was about him that made her so curious. He seemed so at ease in the quiet of the bakery, as if the rain, the warmth, and the scent of fresh bread were all the company he needed. Sophie took a deep breath, letting the comforting aroma of the bakery calm her nerves. She wasn't sure why she felt so shy around Daniel. After all, they had spoken so many times before. But today, there was a different energy in the air. Perhaps it was the rain, or perhaps it was just the way he had looked at her earlier, his eyes soft and thoughtful. When the last customer left, Sophie decided to take a chance. She poured herself a cup of coffee and walked over to Daniel's table, her heart beating a little faster than usual. "Mind if I join you?" she asked, keeping her tone light and casual. He looked up, surprised but pleased. "Of course not. Please." She sat across from him, the warmth of the coffee cup seeping into her hands as she settled into the chair. For a moment, neither of them spoke, content to watch the rain together in comfortable silence. The soft patter of raindrops on the windows was the only sound, and it was oddly soothing, like a melody playing just for them. Sophie finally broke the silence, her voice quiet and calm. "It's funny, isn't it? How the rain can make everything seem slower, more peaceful." Daniel nodded, his eyes still focused on the rain outside. "Yeah. It's like the world pauses for a while, gives you time to think." He paused, turning his gaze to her. "I love coming here on days like this. It's calming." Sophie smiled, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire crackling in the bakery's hearth. "I'm glad. That's exactly what I hoped this place would be, a little retreat from everything else." He looked at her then, really looked, and Sophie felt a quiet connection pass between them, something unspoken but deeply felt. She was always comfortable in her bakery, but something about Daniel's presence made it feel even cozier, as if the two of them were sharing more than just coffee and a rainy afternoon. They talked about small things, how Daniel's day had gone, the books they were reading, the things they noticed about the town when it rained. The conversation flowed easily, like the rain itself, gentle and steady, with no rush to go anywhere. As the evening wore on, the rain showed no signs of stopping, but neither of them minded. The bakery felt like a world unto itself, separate from the wet streets outside. The glow from the fire softened the edges of everything, creating an atmosphere that felt timeless, as if they had all the time in the world. At one point, Sophie leaned back in her chair, feeling utterly relaxed. Her body was warm from the coffee and the fire, her mind quiet and peaceful. She noticed Daniel watching her, a small, almost wistful smile on his face. "What?" she asked, her voice soft with curiosity. He hesitated for a moment, as if considering how much to say. "It's just, you seem really at peace here. Like you were meant to be in this bakery, on a day like this." Sophie's heart swelled at his words. She looked around the cozy space she had created, the shelves filled with freshly baked bread, the wooden tables, the warm glow of the lights. "I guess I am," she said quietly. "It feels like home." He smiled, and for a moment, Sophie felt as if the world had slowed to a perfect pause, the rain outside mirroring the peaceful rhythm of her heart. As the evening grew darker, Daniel stayed longer than usual, both of them content to sit in the warmth of the bakery while the rain fell steadily outside. There was something comforting about the quiet between them, as though they had both found a shared sense of peace in this small, cozy space. After a while, Daniel glanced at his watch, a reluctant smile on his face. "I guess I should head home before the rain gets worse." Sophie felt a pang of disappointment, though she knew he was right. Still, the thought of him leaving made the bakery feel a little less warm. "I suppose so," she said, trying to keep her tone light. He stood, gathering his umbrella and coat, but he didn't move to the door right away. Instead, he turned to her, his expression thoughtful. "Sophie," he began, his voice gentle, "would you like to have dinner with me sometime? Maybe when it's not raining," he added with a soft laugh, though there was a nervousness in his eyes. Her heart skipped a beat, warmth spreading through her chest. She had hoped for this moment, though she hadn't been sure if it would ever come. Now, standing in front of her, Daniel seemed just as hopeful, just as uncertain. "I'd love that," she replied, her smile bright and genuine. "When the weather clears up." Daniel's relief was palpable, and he smiled at her in a way that made the room feel even cozier than before. "Great. I'll look forward to it." He left then, stepping out into the rain with a wave, his umbrella bobbing down the street until it disappeared around the corner. Sophie stood by the window, watching the rain fall for a moment longer. The bakery felt quiet without him, but the warmth of the fire still lingered, wrapping around her like a soft embrace. She took a deep breath, feeling a sense of peace and contentment settle over her. The rain had brought with it more than just a quiet day. It had given her a chance to connect, to open up, and to look forward to something new. As she turned to close up the bakery for the night, the sound of the rain continued its steady, soothing rhythm, lulling her into a state of deep calm. The day had been long and peaceful, and now, as the night settled in, she felt ready for rest. Sophie locked the door, the bakery now dark except for the soft glow of the fire. She moved through the quiet space, savoring the warmth and the stillness. Tomorrow would bring another day, but for now, she was content to let the rain carry her into a restful sleep, her mind calm and her heart full. The rain fell softly throughout the night, its gentle rhythm a lullaby that soothed the town to sleep. In the warmth of the bakery, Sophie drifted off, her thoughts on Daniel, their quiet connection, and the promise of what might come next. The cozy atmosphere of the bakery, the soft patter of rain on the windows, and the warmth of the fire filled her dreams with peace and contentment. And as she slept, the world outside continued to turn, the rain falling gently, carrying her into a deep, peaceful rest, where everything felt possible and every moment was wrapped in warmth and quiet joy.